Dr. Zachary Marschall, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Dr. Marschall, this month the Kennedy Center Board appointed President Trump as the new chairman after he fired several Biden-appointed board members. As a professor of arts and administration and cultural policy, what do you make of this?
I think this is the most significant cultural policy change we've seen in the last 40 years. I teach this at the University of Kentucky, how government supports and funds the arts, and I can tell you that it's very important for us to be putting resources into the best art and making sure that Americans have access to it. The former Kennedy Center Board failed in that mission, so I think this is a great opportunity to get back on the path of cultural renewal and to the golden age that Trump is promising. We've had enough years of divisive politics plaguing our arts and culture.
You make a really interesting point. For those who might not know, there is a beautiful museum on the top floor of the Kennedy Center, open to the public if you're ever in the area, attending a show or not, that I highly recommend checking out to see why it was established. What was the initial intent of this cultural center, and how does it compare to the Kennedy Center you see today?
Most people don't know the legislation for the Kennedy Center was crafted in 1958 as a national performing arts center and national cultural center. That was then created into the Kennedy Center after the assassination, and they decided to make it a memorial in addition to the original intent of the building, which opened in 1971. So what we saw in the 1960s as it was being completed and being launched, we saw that the Kennedy administration and the center was prioritizing access to the arts and the best arts for all Americans, regardless of their income or their background. And that pursuit has no political affiliation. So it is in keeping with Kennedy's original mission that Trump is saying we need to have the best stars on our stage and we need to make sure we're putting the best art out there.
This is probably an area or a sector that many people didn't think was political, but here we are. So how have more traditional artists and art forms been left out of the Kennedy Center, and how does it compare when you look at these changes that you're seeing now?
Well, you can just look at the Kennedy Center Honors, which happen every December, and it honors the best artists in music, in film, in musical theater. You'll find very few conservatives among the honorees. You'll find very few conservatives or non-political artists doing solo concerts. I was at an Audra McDonald concert a few years ago at the Kennedy Center. She stopped halfway through the performance to lambast conservatives and Trump. This is a Broadway star, and the problem is that there's been too many years where the Kennedy Center has endorsed initiatives and social justice programming and performances where they see criticizing the right and promoting gender ideology and promoting anti-racism theory as content neutral, which means that it's just a given. We all think this. So there's no awareness, and there hasn't been for years among the Kennedy Center leaders, that they're being extremely exclusive to people who don't think like them.
You've said in your op-ed in the Washington Times that art institutions like the Kennedy Center produce cultural value, or should, in our communities. How can we start to use art to heal some of the political divides and encourage more pride in our American identity?
This actually goes right to what my dissertation was on with art museums and using communities as a way to market and cultivate relationships through art among especially underserved communities and marginalized communities. We need to be looking at the cultural value, and this is something that's part of the cultural policy theory I teach, which is that arts institutions like the Kennedy Center create economic value for their communities through tourism, through different types of business development, but it also enriches lives. And so we need to be engaging with the communities who live around Washington, D.C. to make sure they have access to these performances, but we should not be putting a political litmus test on admission saying that you might be underserved, but if you disagree with us, you're not going to be part of the community we want.
With that said, what would you like to see moving forward, and what major programming changes do you expect to see taking place at the Kennedy Center?
What I expect to see in the next 3 years will be probably an embrace of American identity, because the Kennedy Center is our premier performing arts institution. This is what was putting on drag shows for kids. This is what was using gender affirming language, which is transgender ideology, on their campus. I think we might see a return to classics of things like Arthur Miller, maybe perhaps Stephen Sondheim. And I think we're going to also see the anniversary that we're celebrating in 2026, the 250th anniversary of our founding, be tied to the programming we're going to see in the 25 to 26 season. But President Trump is pushing arts agencies and pushing arts institutions to celebrate this upcoming anniversary. So I think we're going to see a more patriotic Kennedy Center schedule than in years past.
And just lastly and briefly, talk to us about the utilization of arts in art forms in terms of a form of soft power to project throughout the world.
Yep, so the arts are a form of soft power, which that's a term that's contrasted to hard power, which might be military power or economic power. This is a way that America is able to exert its influence throughout the world. And those of us who lived through the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the last Trump administration saw that people around the world hated us for different things at different times, whether it was the Iraq War or the presidents we elected, but they still saw our films, they still saw our music. So soft power through the arts and culture is very important for us to maintain our position as the world's leader. And when we are able to bolster places like the Kennedy Center, which is a pinnacle of our American identity, it only increases the prestige of being an American and having American culture. And that is all part of how I think President Trump sees using the Kennedy Center to augment American identity and also our power abroad.
Dr. Zachary Marschall, really fascinating perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.